Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Night 4, the final night of our four-part Townhall series, From Disparity to Parity, Examining Social Determinants of African American Health. I'm Judy Reese Morse, President and CEO of the Urban League of Louisiana, and it has been our pleasure to bring this Townhall series to you this week in partnership with the Louisiana Legislative Black Caucus. Tonight's focus is on the unique role entrepreneurship can play as communities develop and invest in ways to recover from the economic impacts of the pandemic. This meeting is being recorded and will be sent to everyone in attendance. Your microphones are muted, and they will be throughout the call, but you will have a chance to ask questions by using the chat function, and you can enter a question at any time throughout the meeting. 7 weeks ago, the Urban League of Louisiana did a pandemic pivot in order to continue serving our participants and clients during this crisis. From workshops on helping small businesses understand how to get connected to stimulus dollars, to virtual job fairs, to town hall meetings like this one, and to providing information and resources to parents and students, we have continued to push forward on the work that we know our stakeholders need now more than ever before. We also released Reform, Recover, Reopen, a strategy document for leaders across Louisiana as they make decisions about when the stay-at-home mandate should be lifted. If you have not yet read this document, please go to the Urban League website, which is urbanleaguela.org. Pull it down and share it with everyone that you know. Whether it's public health security or economic security, whether it's today or later, the Urban League will continue to advocate and engage around the issues that matter most to communities of color across Louisiana. So now let's get started with our town hall. I want to introduce you to two members of the Louisiana Legislative Black Caucus. First, you'll hear from Representative Edmund Jordan, and then after Edmund Jordan, you'll hear from Representative Travis Johnson. We are thrilled to be able to partner with the Legislative Black Caucus. Our partnership is a long-standing one. We are so happy that they are with us to bring this important information to communities across the state, and we're delighted to hear from the members this evening who are going to put a frame around this issue of entrepreneurship and economic development. So first, let's hear from Representative Edmund Jordan. Representative Jordan?
Good afternoon, good evening. Can you hear me, Judy?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Well, look, let me first of all thank you, and let me welcome everyone. And let me start by saying that it's an honor to be with you tonight for this topic on entrepreneurship. It's certainly the Black Caucus's privilege to continue to work with the Urban League as we seek to create economic empowerment and self-reliance in communities of color. And whether that's through negotiations with our stakeholders, Judy, as you're well aware of, is through legislation with our colleagues, we're happy to do so. And, you know, some of those measures, for folks who may not be aware, we have things like the Hudson Initiative, the Louisiana Minority Supply Development Council, and certainly you can work with the Louisiana Disadvantaged Business Certification. And those things sound good, and you know, we're making great strides, but frankly, there's a lot of work that we still have to do. And one of the things that we've certainly been working on as a caucus the last few years is making sure that communities of color have access to capital, or making sure that they're able to secure bonding. And these are some of the challenges that are in place before us. But as always, it's imperative that we remain vigilant and coordinated to convert these roadblocks into opportunities for us. So what does that mean for tonight's topic as it relates to COVID-19? Look, I've said this before, and I'm sure others have said it. We can't let this health disparity turn into a wealth disparity. And so what does that mean? So to me, that means we have to make sure as a community, if we're going to suffer the most liabilities in this health crisis, then that means we should reap most of the benefits from it and trying to solve it. So what does that look like? You know, for example, when government and private grants are used for community outreach, we ought to make sure and demand that the people who are receiving the funds for conducting that research, at least in part, reflect the communities that they're reaching. So that means if we're doing academic studies, the Southern University system, along with Grambling, Xavier, and Dillard, they should be at the table with the other major universities. If we're having doctors that are doing studies, then that means we ought to have doctors of color doing those studies along with everyone else. And I just think that if we're going to do something, we need to make sure that we always have a seat at the table. So I'm really looking forward tonight to see how the conversation goes and to see if we can address some of those issues. So Judy, I want to thank you for the hard work that you've done, certainly in my time in the legislature. And I do look forward to continuing to work with you.
Thank you so much, Representative Jordan. We have always enjoyed working with you. We're so grateful for the leadership that you provide, and look forward to doing a lot more work with you. You made some excellent points, and they really start to shape up what we're going to hear later in this town hall meeting. So thank you again so much. Now we will hear from Representative Travis Johnson, also a member of the Louisiana House of Representatives, and more importantly, a member of the Louisiana Legislative Black Caucus. Hi, Representative Johnson.
Judy, thank you so much. And as I also, again, my name is Representative C. Travis Johnson. I represent the 21st District, and that is Northeast Louisiana. That's East Carroll, Madison, Tensas, Concordia Parish, and Catahoula. And so I'm so glad that the Urban League of Louisiana and the Legislative Black Caucus have this partnership, because it is going to be needed as we move forward, especially after this pandemic is over. Two things that I think are critical issues, and that's compliance and also training. I think those two issues are critical because we have to make sure that our Black-owned businesses are trained and understand compliance. I have a small example of my great-great-grandfather's company called Brown Company. It's 3 generations. We are a general contractor. The company gets state grants and funding, and have long-standing relationships with the banks. It gets commercial contracts from hotels. It gets residential business, and also from colleges and universities. So it's 3 generations. It has all this tax work, paperwork, and compliance from every angle. And so whenever this company needs something, it has the resources, it has the direct relationships to be able to make it happen. But the big question is, what about the companies that doesn't have that? And one thing that I know, and especially in our community, is not that we're not given opportunities, because we know we're not. We know we're not getting the appropriate amount of assistance, especially when it comes to PPP. Let's look at that, for example. I look at the study. It says 90% of Black-owned businesses are not they're being cut out from the PPP grants, or we say loan that will probably be grants or forgivable loans. And so some of the procedures or requirements for that is you have to give your payroll filings, you have to give your insurance, unemployment insurance, paperwork, and sometimes our businesses do not have that small information. So I think that it's going to be incumbent upon the Urban League of Louisiana and the Legislative Black Caucus to make sure that we continue with training and understanding compliance, because by the time we need to apply for these things, it's too late. And some of our Black businesses are rambling, trying to redo 2 years of taxes, or they don't have the proper documentation to qualify for some of this assistance. And so on our end, I'm so excited, and that we're going to continue to uplift them and keep them informed. For example, this is a true story. There's a truck business, a guy who I know very well. His company last year made almost $650,000 for his truck company. 2 years in business. He rents 2 big trucks. He has 2 independent contractors who work under his business, where he paid in with a 1099 form. However, he doesn't pay payroll taxes on those individuals. When he does his taxes, he files personal taxes. He does a Schedule C under his business. That type of business should be doing an individual tax return 1120. But he chooses in a tax where you can choose how you want to do your taxes. But in that instance, it's hard for accounting or a bank to review his personal taxes to qualify him for particular loans. And so those are the type of nuances and things that we have to make sure that our businesses know about, how to be in compliance, and to get so that we can help them get the proper funding that they need. Another small example is a hair salon in New Orleans, made over $400,000 between a beauty salon and a person who does wigs. Make a lot of money, great business, does online sales. But again, that individual does not have all the compliance, proper documentation that they will even qualify for the PPP. They will qualify for the 10,000 assistance grant, but they won't qualify for the PPP. So those, again, I want to keep on reiterating that we have to continue to train our people around the state, make sure they know and they're ready for opportunities. And also I say as hemp, as we look forward to entrepreneurs getting involved in new business. I have the largest agricultural district in the state. The state is now issuing hemp license. Southern University and LSU are both working very hard to license and get folks trained to partake in that new industry. And a lot of Black farmers and Black stakeholders and business people want to be involved in the hemp industry, but they're lacking information. They don't know how, and that's why the Legislative Black Caucus, we're working very hard with Southern University to make sure that we're getting information out there so that entrepreneurs can take advantage and can be on the forefront of this new industry. And it's something so small that business owners don't know. We know about our personal credit report. We know Equifax, TransUnion, and Equifax, TransUnion, Experian are the 3 credit bureaus. But some big Black-owned businesses don't know that there is also a credit report for businesses. You have Duns and Bradstreet, Experian, and Equifax. Those small things, and when they apply for assistance, they use their personal credit. And at times, when you're a new business, you have to utilize your personal credit. But when you're an established business, almost 3 to 5 years, then you can utilize your business credit report. So again, as I close, these are the small things that we have to focus on, the Urban League of Louisiana and the Legislative Black Caucus. We have to continue to train with compliance and continue to train our entrepreneurs and Black-owned business to be ready and take advantage of all the resources that's out there. And when the resources are not there, it's our job to continue to have a database to know, hey, we're applying for these grants, we're applying for these opportunities, but we're not getting these opportunities. We have a track record. That's when the Black Caucus can then step in with the stakeholders, the governor, and the secretaries and commissioners, say, hey, guys, we have to do a better job and being equal, and we have that track record to do that. Judy, again, thank you guys so much for having us, and we look forward to this long-lasting relationship.
Thank you so much, Representative Johnson. I love that energy. I really appreciate those remarks. And I know that we are going to hear a lot from our panelists about those kinds of issues, the ones that you raised. So I'm excited to get to that conversation. But before we get to the panel, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce our next guest speaker. Stephanie DeVane is the Vice President for Entrepreneurship and Business Development with the National Urban League. We are so pleased to have her here with us. Her schedule is so busy. She is working with more than 89 other affiliates across the United States, but she made time in her schedule to be with us this evening, and you will soon understand why that is to your benefit. Stephanie, we are so glad to have you. Please, the microphone and the camera are yours.
Hi, I'm sorry. Technical difficulties. Good evening, everyone. Thank you to Judy and thank you to Klassi for that very kind introduction. My name is Stephanie Diwan. I appreciate very much the opportunity to be here with all of you tonight and participate in this important event. And also, I want to thank the Urban League of Louisiana for their commitment and dedication to all of our small businesses. I pray that you and your families are all well as you go through this time. Getting from disparity to parity is always on our minds at the National Urban League, and we develop solutions to accelerate the growth of Black-owned small businesses and entrepreneurs. And our ultimate goal is improved quality of life and economic resilience. Our programs seek to eliminate the disparities between minority and white business owners and their performance indicators, including things like growth, jobs, and wealth creation. And our ultimate goal really is entrepreneurial parity. And what I mean by that is, in essence, we want the number of minority firms and their gross receipts to be on par with the minority adult population percentages. And we believe that in an equitable space, economic impact rises, barriers to entry and barriers to scale are non-existent for MBEs who have systematically been left behind. So this is our goal. Our 12 entrepreneurship centers across the country, including the Women's Business Resource Center, there at the Urban League of Louisiana, serve over 10,000 entrepreneurs. They create or save over 60,000 jobs last year and connected clients to over $150 million of financing and contracting opportunities. Now, in the couple of minutes that I have, I just want to talk really quickly about what we've learned during this crisis at the National Urban League. As you know, the Paycheck Protection Program that was administered by the SBA through their lenders for the purpose of forgivable loans to small businesses didn't go as well as we had hoped and expected. And many of the small business owners whose businesses were severely impacted by COVID-19 were left out of the funding. Although about $1.7 million of loans were made by about 5,000 lenders, a good portion went to companies like the Shake Shacks and Ruth Chris Steakhouse, no disrespect to a New Orleans institution, who were able to take advantage of the stimulus funds to obtain multi-million-dollar loans and leaving so many businesses without funding. And we know that businesses in our communities are even more likely than many others to be exposed to coronavirus. They're in the healthcare, they're in the social assistance, they're in the retail and face-to-face business sectors. And many of our businesses have been severely and negatively impacted by the social distancing guidelines put in place to protect us. We also know that as a result of pressure by the National Urban League and other organizations, the Senate recently passed some additional funding for the Paycheck Protection Program. And we've been working very hard with our affiliate network to ensure that clients and other small businesses across the country have access to that information, to the resources that they need to apply, and that our entrepreneurship centers are standing by to assist them in making sure that they have the capital they need to grow and sustain their businesses and come out of this crisis. So what is the Urban League doing specifically? And I have a confession to make. Klassi may get a kick out of this. I was on your website about a month ago, right after the crisis, and I found a phrase that I love. I've borrowed it, some would say stolen, and I'm using it, I've adopted it as my mantra. And I'm just going to paraphrase here, but it is, we don't pause, we pivot. And I think that is a perfect way to describe the Urban League affiliates and their commitment to assisting their clients, whether they're small businesses or homeowners during this crisis, and many, many others that we work with. So across the country, our network of 12 centers and probably about 20 or so other affiliates that serve small businesses have continued to serve clients in the safest and most efficient way possible. They've all taken precautionary measures to ensure the safety of clients and staff. They've developed contingency plans, including conducting their training, their workshops, their counseling sessions through electronic, digital, online means. They're on telephones with clients. It's business as usual. Not only are they providing resource information on coronavirus, but they are also providing, their normal course of business, workshops, trainings, and counseling sessions to help those folks with everything that they need. But we are also very, very heavily focused and invested at the National Urban League on how we're going to emerge from this crisis and what kind of resources and services we should be providing. We've learned a couple of things from our small business owners who missed the opportunity to get the PPP loans. One is that they had an inability to readily access capital. They also had a lack of systems in place to maintain their operations and prevent business disruption. So everything from communications, technology, staffing, equipment. And they also had, in many cases, inadequate financial management procedures in place that inhibited them. And lastly, less flexible operating models that couldn't easily be shifted during stay-in-place mandates. So just a few things. What we're going to be working with our affiliates to do is guiding entrepreneurs through loan application processes, answering questions, assisting them with the identification and the gathering of documents and information, as well as providing information on how to access and apply for these private loans and grants and strategies with the goal of increasing credit scores to those with minimal or poor credit histories. We're going to continue to assist with development of business continuity plans, including business impact analysis, recovery strategies, and plan development. We're going to help identify web hosting portals and telecommunication devices and means for off-site work during the crisis and after. We're going to put a strong focus on back office procedures, accounting, financial reporting, and understanding tax implications. And lastly, we are going to build scalable businesses that have multiple revenue streams and operational flexibility and help folks identify new revenue streams that can bolster their resources and help them to drive sustainability. So we are very, very grateful for the opportunity to assist our small businesses across the country. I'm very grateful for Klassi, her staff and team, and Judy and all the work that they're doing here at the Urban League of Louisiana. We will continue to assist you in any way possible. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak and talk about what we're doing. I wish you and your families well during this crisis, and as we emerge, I hope to see you soon in Louisiana. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. We are so grateful for all that you do all the time to support the Urban League of Louisiana. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. And now it is my pleasure to introduce to you Ms. Klassi Duncan, who serves as the Director of the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation with the Urban League of Louisiana. She is going to moderate a Powerhouse panel on entrepreneurship. And we're so excited and ready to get started. So Klassi, take it away. Can't hear you. Klassi, are you ready? I think we may be having some challenges
with
good.
Your
audio. There you are. Hi, Klassi.
I think we were going back and forth. I was unmuting myself and just pressing the button, but thank you so much, Judy. I appreciate that. Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Klassi Duncan, and I serve as the Director for the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation for the Urban League of Louisiana. I'm honored to be a part of this series and a part of this work. I want to say first thanks to Representative Jordan and Representative Johnson for their remarks and for our leadership from Ms. Stephanie DeVane from the National Urban League. Thank you, Stephanie, for your remarks as well. And thank you for all of your support, through the years for the work that we're doing here at the Urban League of Louisiana. But again, I'm honored to be a part of this series as we round out our tele-town hall series. I wanted to give special thanks to the Legislative Black Caucus for their partnership, and to the many organizations and individuals that have contributed to this conversation. It is definitely just the beginning of the conversation. So again, thank you to everyone. The Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation includes our Women's Business Resource Center, and it also includes our Contractors Resource Center. We also have programming under the Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development for DBE supportive services for Region B in Louisiana, which includes the New Orleans area and also Hammond. And so we are in this business of small business development, right? That is what we do every day. And we do that through education, through trainings and workshops and roundtables. We also provide our clients with one-on-one and small group business advising, as well as access to resources. So I think it was Representative Johnson that talked about, getting access to funding and bonding. That is the work that we are doing with our clients every day. And so I wanted to make sure that we know and understand the resources that are available, not just in New Orleans, but across the state. And so that's why we have put together this Powerhouse panel tonight, to really be able to bring to the forefront these resources and make sure that we all are clear about what's available, and then what are the next steps for what it is that we need to really shore up the opportunities for minority-owned businesses, again, across the state. So we are looking forward to this engaging panel tonight, and we are looking to, we have the hopes of really collectively and collaboratively supporting women and minority-owned businesses, and that is what we plan to do. And so on tonight's panel, we have Mr. Michael Ricks, District Director for the Small Business Administration, the Louisiana District Office, Ms. Stephanie Hartman, Director of Small Business Services for Louisiana Economic Development. We also have Ms. Fela Meyer, who is the President and CEO of the Women's Business Enterprise Council South, and Ms. Kalisha Garrett, Executive Director for the New Orleans Regional Black Chamber of Commerce. I am excited to have all of them on the call tonight. Again, this is just the beginning of the discussion, but the purpose of this panel is to add, we're trying to add to this discussion, trying to add breadth and depth to our discussion around the disparities that have been highlighted during COVID-19. And notice I say highlighted because they didn't just emerge, right? They're just being highlighted at this point. But we know that the majority of those that have been impacted will test positive, and deaths have been African Americans and other communities of color. And so the Urban League of Louisiana is continuing to hone in on this disparity, and the goal is to really uncover, these social and economic and generational determinants, with the goal of really creating and developing some themes that will guide our future initiatives. And so that is the work that we are doing, and that's why I keep saying that this is just the beginning. So we've talked about the underlying conditions as well that characterize our most vulnerable communities, such as, we talked about this, well, really every night. Hypertension and heart disease and high blood pressure. We talked about all of these things, but we also talked about the systemic issues that really give birth to these issues, like racism and poverty and implicit bias and food deserts and inadequate education and healthcare systems for people of color. So we talked about all of these things, again, to really bring forth how we're going to look to resolve this. And again, the health issue is really twofold, right? We're talking about the impact of the virus itself, but we're also talking about the residual effects. We're talking about the anxiety, the depression, the PTSD. There's so much loss of life, right? We talked on Monday night, I think it was Ashley Briscoe from Lake Charles, who had lost both of her parents due to the virus. And so I know we have also one of our business advisors lost both her aunt and uncle during this time. And so we've seen this, so much grief and so much loss of life. And so how are we dealing with that? But here's the issue. We cannot talk about generational health disparities without talking about their impact on generational wealth, the creation of generational wealth and the sustainability of generational wealth. And Dr. Shervington said it on Monday night, and I was so happy to hear her say it: without health, there is no wealth, right? Without health, there is no wealth, no wealth. But I am clear that this concept really goes both ways, right? So generational health is a determinant of generational wealth, but also generational wealth is a determinant of generational health. So we're going to get to that at a later discussion, but I want to make sure that we understand that the concept goes both ways, and it's really a much deeper discussion that we plan to have really soon. So of course, those impacted really include our business owners and our families, right? They're in their families. So just as other disasters and states of emergency, this pandemic, has shown that for our small and minority businesses across the region, we are struggling. And there's many reasons, right? And I think Stephanie talked about a lot of them as well: the poverty, lack of financial resources and opportunities, lack of education and preparedness. We know this. So now it is time for us to figure out what is the best way to make sure that our small businesses have the education and the resources that they need, because this is not the first crisis and it won't be the last, right? Stephanie also talked about some of the characteristics, especially in our low to moderate income communities, right? So in our communities of color, there are certain characteristics of our small businesses that make us more vulnerable during these times, right? So many of us are non-employer firms. A lot of us are service-based business that really have a heavy reliance on the owner-operator to provide the service. If we do have employees, we have one or two or three family members. And so we also have a lot of gig workers, right? We have a heavy reliance on bootstrapping or, not having a lot of, sources of income. So we rely on contributions from family and friends and bartering and doing odd jobs. And also limited financial resources, right? Typically lacking financial readiness and credit preparedness. So this is where we are, right? And we know that there is more that can be done. Even with the number of resources that are available in this state for small businesses, we are still seeing that there is more that can be done. I was sharing with someone earlier today on another call that when we had our first session for the economic injury disaster loans to share with our small businesses, we were simply amazed and surprised at the number of businesses that showed up on the call. We had over 1,000 businesses that registered, and maybe 800, just shy of 800 that joined us on the call. And I'm thinking to myself, where have all these businesses been all this time, right? And so there are more businesses out there that need to get assistance, they need to get help, but they need to do that before a crisis happens. We need to do that as a regular course of business, accessing these resources. So I don't want to take up too much more time, but just know that there's more to come on this topic. But I'm going to kick us off with our panel, and we're going to start off with Mr. Michael Ricks, our district director for SBA. Mike, we know that with local and statewide stay-at-home mandates, excuse me, as well as social distancing directives, our small businesses are experiencing negative, seemingly, insurmountable impacts of the virus, right? Many small businesses have closed, they've limited operations, they've lost revenues, they've terminated or furloughed employees. I want us to kick off this conversation tonight. And if you could share with us in your remarks, what are you hearing, based on you guys being a state serving organization, what are you hearing from the small businesses? Do you have any updates for the community around the Paycheck Protection Plan, and as well as the economic injury disaster loans? And then what other resources are you aware of that can support our small non-employer firms, independent contractors, and gig workers? So again, thank you, Mike, for joining us this evening, and I'll let you take it away. Hey, Mike, go ahead and unmute yourself. In the control panel, just click the red microphone to unmute yourself. Give us 1 second. We're trying to get Mike's microphone unmuted. All right, we're going to circle back so that we can get Mike's microphone unmuted. And so, Nicole, let's go ahead and transition to Ms. Stephanie Hartman. So in addition to our work with the SBA and several organizations, but our Louisiana Economic Development Organization is one of those organizations. So on the line, we have Ms. Stephanie Hartman, who is the Director of Small Business Services for LED. Stephanie, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Again, I want to ask the question and pose the question to you around what you are hearing from small businesses from across the state. And also, I want to talk to you about the topic that Representative Johnson, and I think also Representative Jordan brought up as well. They talked about these challenges with minority-owned businesses accessing capital. So I want you to touch on that, because we know this is not a new discrepancy, right? There's plenty of information out there. MBDA and MSDC, many organizations have done, found reports and developed reports on what this looks like for minority-owned businesses. We're less likely to get approved for small business loans. And then if we do get approved, we get lower amounts and higher interest rates. So we know this. So I wanted you to touch on that tonight, what LED provides us guidance around that. And then I also would like you to share what programs LED has in place for our businesses, women and minority-owned businesses across the state. Stephanie.
Great, thanks, Klassi, and thank you all for having me here today. I'll go ahead and I'll kind of start off with just overviewing some of the resources, just to kind of highlight what we in Small Business Services in our group within LED focuses on. So we're wholly focused on providing support to the small businesses based in Louisiana, and we do that through kind of 3 buckets of services and 8 programs that we have. So one of those buckets is to help build capacity, and we do that through technical assistance through the Small and Emerging Business Development Program. We also have a mentor protege recognition program and our Louisiana Contractors Accreditation Institute, which provides technical assistance and training for those looking for opportunities and to start or grow a business within the construction space in partnership with the community and technical college system. That second bucket that we have is increasing opportunity, and we look at that by providing certification programs to help our Louisiana-based small business gain more opportunities with state contracting through the Hudson and Veteran initiatives. I believe the Hudson initiative was mentioned earlier by a representative. And also through our bonding assistance program, which provides guarantees for bid payment and performance bonds for small Louisiana-based contractors. And then the third bucket is accelerating growth. So once businesses have kind of gotten past those emerging stages, have started to grow the business, or looking at adding employees, potentially expanding their markets beyond the borders of Louisiana to find new customers and new markets. We have programs specific to that type of company related to economic gardening, which is our program focused on strategic market research, and also CEO roundtables, which is a peer-to-peer program providing relational best practices, experience sharing with that size of business. So back to the question that you were asking related to what we're hearing from business owners. Clearly we're hearing from business owners that they're worried about being able to stay in business. When will they see the financial assistance that they've applied for, and in some cases been approved with. And also for those with employees, we've heard questions about, keeping those employees engaged, if they are able to kind of keep them on the payroll, and then transitioning back into having them in the workplace and having the employees want to come back. And then also, of course, what are other sources of capital? So obviously concerns have sort of run the gamut in terms of what small business owners are dealing with, because there are so many issues that have come up as a result of this. But of course, as you mentioned, a lot of those have been focused around cash flow and capital. So specific to some of the resources that LED has put in place in relation to COVID-19, there is a loan portfolio guarantee program that the state and LED has stood up, issuing guarantees up to 20% on loans with participating banks of up to $100,000 for small businesses with fewer than 100 employees and who have been impacted by COVID-19. LED has also implemented a COVID-19 specific resource page on the website. So as new things become available and new information is updated, those things are being added to that section of the LED website to keep people tapped into what is available and what is out there, because the information has been changing kind of on a day-to-day basis. So to access both that resource page and for more information on that loan portfolio guarantee program, people can go to opportunitylouisiana.com/COVID-19. So that's Opportunity Louisiana spelled out .com/COVID-19. And from the standpoint of our group within Small Business Services, I think one of the most significant things, and you touched on this too, Klassi, that small businesses can do is really stay engaged with the resources available. And I think that applies certainly now in a time of crisis, but also when business is operating as usual. And the resources that we have and that I mentioned earlier to help build capacity, increase opportunity, and accelerate growth are really built to help support those businesses that have the greatest need. But in many cases, it's not the women and minority-owned businesses that have the greatest need who are accessing the resources. And so I think there are a lot of businesses that could benefit from these programs and who they're designed for that either are not tapping into them or are not aware that they are there for them. So that's something that we're certainly always trying to improve, and I think that there's a lot of room there for improvement. And also, when we talk about access to capital, I think that the resources are really a key piece to that puzzle as well, because being connected to the Urban League or working with the small business development centers are some of the greatest tools that can be tapped into by our small businesses, because these are resources that can help first generation entrepreneurs that don't have that academic background or that generational business background. It can help them with getting prepared for going to a lender and have the potential to be more successful when seeking capital, but also with building a sustainable business. And these are resources that can stay with the business owner as they grow and develop and go through that pipeline, you know, whether they want to be a lifestyle business and kind of stay, you know, if as a sole proprietorship or with 1 or 2 employees, or if they want to move forward and grow that business into something bigger. And when we talk about technical assistance and training, I think that COVID-19 has really driven a lot of resources further towards really utilizing technological tools at our disposal to serve small business owners more effectively, like the webinar that we're having today. You know, clearly it would be difficult to have, you know, over 100 people in a room right now to access the information that's being shared on this webinar today. But even, you know, absent or before this time, it was difficult to reach that many people with this kind of information. So, you know, in this case, much of what we've done has been out of necessity and literally having no other options. But there's a lot of newly found opportunity with making these resources and training more accessible through online and interactive support using these virtual tools. And so just as an example of that, LED's Contractors Accreditation Institute, our general contractor seminar started before the pandemic really took hold and before the stay-at-home orders were implemented. So that started out in the classrooms at the various Louisiana community and technical college locations around the state. After the decisions were made within the universities and the community and technical colleges to not have people on campuses, we had to turn that over to using Zoom and administering that program by virtual means at the homes and on the personal devices of all of the participants. And the feedback that we got from the participants, because they did continue to attend the class, was just overwhelmingly positive about that mode of delivery. So we've rescheduled our residential seminar, moving that to June 20th. We're going to have our residential contractor seminar. And instead of doing that class at all of the technical college locations, we are actually going to be doing that the same way using Zoom, so that people can access that from their personal devices, either at work or at home, and hopefully be able to get that information to more individuals that are really seeking it out. So I think that there's really opportunities to reach more busy small business owners who may be managing the running of the business from marketing to financials, along with actually providing services, building their products, and letting them be able to access training and counseling sessions without having to drive the 30 minutes to an hour in traffic, which I'm sure is one of the things that in everyday life that we're not anxious to return to, but I'm sure that we will. But it also creates an opportunity to provide access to resources for small businesses outside of our metropolitan centers who otherwise would have to drive many miles to attend a training or a class. So I think that COVID-19 has really highlighted in our small business community. Also, this is another piece that kind of, as you were mentioning, just kind of gets, it may have always been there, but it's something that we didn't really see previously. But another thing that we're seeing is how many businesses are kind of behind in terms of e-commerce, utilizing online tools to do business, to find new customers or to deliver products and services. And this has been highlighted mainly because that has become one of the exclusive ways that a lot of folks are even able to do business right now. So I think this is an area that we especially want to focus efforts on in providing support, as making products and services available online or leveraging online tools to reach new markets can really help our small businesses not only be more sustainable, but also to be more resilient. And these are places where we see opportunities to build and strengthen resources in order to help our minority and women-owned small businesses gain more access and expertise, as well as increase chances for success. So I think it's important for us to set the goal of taking these things that we're being forced to learn as a result of the pandemic and to use those lessons to improve upon what we've done in the past, to make our small businesses, and particularly those in our underserved communities, stronger. And I also think it's important to try to keep the small businesses that have now become engaged, tapped in, and to also get even more of them connected to the resources like the technical assistance through our Small and Emerging Business Development Program, or procurement opportunities with the Hudson Initiative, and to resource providers like the Urban League so that they continue to access these resources and support, not just now, but also as we move forward. So I do want to thank you all for the opportunity to be with you today and to share some of what we're seeing within LED and within small business services, and also some of our hopes in terms of what we can improve upon, what areas we can strengthen, to try and make sure that if we are here again, we're not in the same place, and that we can emerge from the tail end of this with an opportunity to be stronger.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Wonderful, wonderful insight on what you guys are seeing across the state and also the resources that LED has available. I wanted to make sure that we highlighted that, again, LED is a state-serving organization, of course, and so there are intermediaries across the state that you can access small businesses services through. And so if you have questions about that, please feel free to reach out to myself, or you can just go to the Opportunity Louisiana website, opportunitylouisiana.com, correct?
Yeah. Yes, that's absolutely right.
I was getting ready to say .org, so opportunitylouisiana.com is that where you can find an intermediary in your part of the state. And so again, thank you so much, Stephanie, for your remarks. We appreciate it, and really appreciate the partnership of LED. So what we're going to do now is go back to Mr. Ricks. I think we got him on the line now. Sorry for any technical difficulties from our end. Mike, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you so much for being with us.
No, you're welcome. Thank you so much for the invite. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I know that you and your team are extremely busy at this time. And so I wanted to let you know that I appreciate you taking the time out to be here on the call with us. We have been working very closely with you and your team, Ms. Joanne Lawrence, your Deputy Director. We've also been working with the Office of Disaster Assistance, Mr. Sushil Kumar, to make sure that small businesses here locally have the information and access to the programs that have been offered for emergency funding. So again, I want to let you know that we appreciate all of your hard work, and we know this has not been an easy time, and we know that it is there's a lot going on. So again, thanks. But I wanted to see if you can provide some information on what you all are seeing across the state. Also, any updates you can provide on the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Plan, as well as the EIDLs. And I'm repeating these things so that if there are people who aren't aware of these terms, the EIDLs, the economic injury disaster loans, if you can provide some updates on those in terms of access to our small businesses across the state, and then any other resources that you are aware of that can support our smaller non-employer firms, our gig workers, our independent contractors, any other resources or programs that they can access would be very helpful tonight. So I will hand it over to you, Mr. Ricks.
Well, thank you so much. Again, I appreciate the invite, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak. Thank you to Representative Johnson and Jordan. I think constructive criticism is always helpful, and certainly I believe that there is a lot that we could do. This is a good learning experience for us, and hopefully, as we move forward, do a better job of reaching all the people who are eligible for any program that's administered by the federal government. I will say that and you are right, the two principal tools that the SBA administers to assist in the COVID-19 pandemic are the Paycheck Protection Program, I'll call it PPP going forward, and also the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, I will call EIDL going forward. First, I'll talk about some of the common complaints and concerns that we get from small businesses. One is delay in funding, inconsistency in information flow, the inability for small businesses to get real-time information on the status of both loan programs. These are questions that we get frequently. Those are the big ones. I'll say, well, first let me talk about both these programs because, well, let me talk about PPP first. It's an imperfect program launched very quickly. To be perfectly honest, I have, in all my years of federal service, I've never seen anything where we went from the president signing a bill into law to actually implementing it within a week. And that's what we had. And on top of that, we didn't get policy guidance on how to do the Paycheck Protection Program until hours before the portal opened and applications started coming in. So when this program first launched, there was a lot of ambiguity with our lending community. We had a great deal of the learning curve was steep. Many of the lenders who joined in to participate in that program had never done SBA lending before, had never used our communication platforms before and how to submit applications. They didn't know our policies and procedures. The guidance was very general in the sense of how to administer the PPP program, the PPP loan, but it frequently referenced back to SBA regulations that many of our lenders were not familiar with. The lenders that were, the lenders that have been using SBA for a while, we had quite a few, about 70 across the state, that were familiar with SBA, really didn't have that much problem with it. They submitted their applications and immediately we started getting them. Within a minute of the loan portal opening, we had already received commitments from 20 different lenders for 50 loans. The lenders that did have difficulty were the ones that weren't familiar with our programs and procedures and how to operate the platforms. We have over 4,000 lenders across the country, all attempting to submit loan applications at the same time. This did create a bandwidth problem, but the system never really crashed. It was just very slow, very difficult for lenders to actually get in and get loan commitments. So the way the program works is a borrower will go to a lender, and this is administered by the SBA through our lending partners, fill out an application, and then at some point the lender has to submit that application to the SBA. So a lot of the concerns that we get from small businesses is that they'll call and they'll say, well, I put my application in a week ago and I still haven't heard anything from my lender. That is really it's the lender's own internal underwriting policies that are creating that problem. Once the loan application is in and submitted to the SBA, they get a loan commitment from the SBA within about 15 minutes. So most of the concerns that we get from, and I'll be perfectly honest, from small businesses that have applied for PPP loans were that they went through some of the larger lending partners who had large, centralized underwriting centers outside of the state. They were really slow to get on board, but apparently they got on board very quickly, and were making loans. I do not have any data on the PPP loan. I cannot give you any breakdown demographically of how the loans are being committed. We haven't had access to the electronic information system from headquarters since April 6th. So a vast majority of the PPP loans that have been made in the state of Louisiana, we have no visibility on. But I can tell you that in the first round of funding, I'm going to call it PPP version 1.0, over $5 billion and almost 27,000 loans, PPP loans, were committed by banks in Louisiana. And when the portal reopened, the backlog of information or requests for loans was so dramatic that our lenders were having difficulty getting through and submitting applications for authorization. The SBA did take steps to change it. A lot of the reason why the application process from the lender's perspective was slow was because the SBA intentionally metered back, and the new PPP version 2.0 had specific set-aside loan amounts for targeted businesses. We also expanded the eligibility of lenders to use the PPP Loan Program to include what would otherwise be considered non-traditional lenders, and it was hoped that this would expand the lending opportunity for businesses that may not have been going to a traditional bank for their funding needs. So I don't have any data on that. I don't know if that's working. I do know that the reports that we're getting out of Washington are that over 4,000 lenders across the state just in the second round of funding have submitted applications, and that's an increase above and beyond after 3 days of the first round of funding. So it does appear that some of these new, what I would call non-traditional lenders, are using the program and then are moving forward. This is a moving target, the PPP Loan Program. We've made some significant changes. We've actually had two major policy changes published by the Treasury Secretary and Administrator Carranza just this past couple of weeks. A lot of these changes were very positive, received very favorably. One, of course, was that churches would now be eligible for lending. They also opened up lending to, it clarified some problems that lenders had with trying to figure out how to calculate what the eligible amount would be for, say, someone like a farmer. That's been clarified. There's been some clarifying guidance, in Klassi. I know you mentioned it before about gig workers and self-employed individuals and sole proprietors who there was a great deal of ambiguity in the initial policy that was put out, and that's been clarified. The additional guidance has made it easier for lenders to know exactly what they should be looking for from a loan applicant to consider what their PPP loan amount might be. And again, I don't have any specific data on how effective that's been, but I do know that we've had we've had mixed results. We've had some success stories. Some of our lending partners are taking in loan applications, getting loan commitments, and then issuing checks or depositing money in the same day. Some of our lending partners take a little bit longer, and we're working through that. The challenges that and in the interest of making sure that this money is available to everybody, one of the steps that we took last night was that we temporarily suspended lenders who have asset values over $1 billion from submitting loan applications. And that would allow our smaller banks smaller credit unions and lenders to access the system without a lot of the larger banks using the program. And again, when this data comes back and it demonstrates that it's had a positive effect to make sure that this money is made available to everybody else, we'll continue to do that. Other changes that we've made in the application process, which has significantly improved performance of our non-traditional lenders and our small community banks, is that we suspended the use of robotic processing systems that a lot of our larger lenders had been using that were taking up a lot of time. And so we are taking steps. We recognize that it wasn't perfect, and we are making changes to try and improve it. As far as money is concerned, in this next round of funding, the last word I got is that we had not even used half of the money that's been allocated for this program. So there's still plenty of money available. I think the lender's a little bit calm now. At first, it was a rush to try and get applications in, but as they can see that the money's not running out as quickly as they anticipated because we've intentionally needed it back, that's slowed down the process a little bit. So that's the PPP loan program. The Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, these two loan programs work in partnership. We definitely recommend that eligible borrowers use both these programs. There are things that the Economic Injury Disaster Loan will cover that the PPP loan program will not. So they do work in partnership. However, you are only allowed to take money for salary from one or the other. Of course, you would want to use the PPP loan program because that would be forgiven. But those people who wish not to apply for the PPP loan program can certainly get the salaries paid. But as it was pointed out, that is a very long process. The Economic Injury Disaster Loan, as we speak right now, unless I've gotten an email in the last 15 minutes, is still closed. The intent was to clear out all of the backlog of economic injury disaster loans that were in the interest of making sure that we are fair in the distribution of that money as well. We're operating on a first-come, first-served basis. No one is being allowed to cut in front of the line. And we have applications that are in the portal that when the money ran out to pay for advances, we suspended considering those until more money was available. So we're working through that now. I have no idea when it will come back on. I will say that I do get a daily report. Now it's 24 hours late, so we do know when disaster loan commitments are coming in, and they're getting smaller. So that tells me that we're about to open that portal up again. It looks like we've got the backlog about under control, and we'll open it soon to that program as well. So the biggest problem that we're having with borrowers going to lending institutions for their capital needs, especially exclusively with the Paycheck Protection Program, is something that was mentioned earlier, and that is say ubiquitous accounting. Lenders certainly have a certain way that they want you to demonstrate your payroll and payroll expenses, and depending upon the sophistication level of the borrower or their need in the past, it hasn't been a problem. What they've done in the past has always worked, but now that they're trying to leverage a loan program administered by a lender, well, lenders expect to see things in a certain way. And of course, I would encourage our small business clients who are looking for a PPP loan at a lending institution is to reach out to our resource partners for assistance in putting that together. So if a lender, tells you that, what it is that you're presenting to them isn't going to be sufficient or isn't what they're looking for, immediately reach out to them. Klassi Duncan, of course, runs our Women's Business Center here in New Orleans through the Urban League. She's a great lady. Her counsels will assist you in putting together, whatever the perception of the problem is, they can help you work through it. Of course, we also have our small business development centers across the state. The best way to find assistance through them is through lsbdc.org. That's lsbdc.org. and find a center that's close to you and reach out to them and then get some further assistance to put your finances together in such a way that you can now qualify for that PPP loan. Going back to what Klassi said, I know the biggest concern right now is independent contractors and self-employed individuals. The PPP loan program wasn't available for them for almost a week before it opened. So there was a backlog of demand for that. We had hoped to get additional guidance on how that would be administered on the day that it was supposed to launch, which was April 9th. But we didn't get it until the next week. So there was a lot of applications that were sitting backlogged in banks waiting for additional guidance. They have that now. They are processing those loans as we speak, and they are getting the principal stick up there. Again, goes back to how these individuals are reporting their income. We do have a specific way that they will. They will report their income on a Schedule C, just like you're filing your taxes. If you haven't filed your taxes yet for July, because they're not due until July, it's been suspended all the way to July. So you may not have filed your taxes for 2019. But you go ahead and fill out the Schedule C just like you were doing your tax returns, and that's what you'll present to the lender, and they will accept that. Of course, they may require additional information like financial records as well, but their loan amount that they're going to calculate is going to be based on that form that you present to them. Otherwise, I think we've got all of the issues worked out with how different companies structure organizations. This came out this week. I don't believe that any of our lenders have any more questions on what they would need to look at to determine eligibility. The only thing that the lenders really are waiting on from us is, and we're waiting for Treasury. Treasury has to tell us what we're going to send to them to get the loan forgiveness, and then we'll communicate that to the banks. And then once they have that, then I think the comfort level for this program will be a lot better.
Well, thank you, Mike. Let me jump in right there. I want to make sure we have enough time for our other panelists, but that's such wonderful information, and folks are looking for the updates. They're looking for, everybody's experiencing some of the issues, and so to hear that things are being put in place to overcome some of these obstacles, I think is great information for us to have. But let me stop because I want to make sure that we have time for questions at the end. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and move on quickly to Ms. Fela Meyer on our panel from the Women's Business Enterprise Council South. And just hold tight, Mike, because I know we have probably some questions that are going to come for you on the PPP and the economic injury disaster loans. Is that okay?
Of course.
All righty, let's go, Ms. Fela Meyer, President and CEO of the Women's Business Enterprise Council South. I wanted to make sure that we heard your perspective today because you have such great experience in this space with working with minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses across the state and across the region. So I wanted to make sure that you can provide some insight into what you are hearing and seeing from our small business community, and then what are your thoughts on what we may be able to more deliberately and adequately do to prepare our small business communities for crisis, death, and succession. So I wanted to hear from you on that. Ms. Fela.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. And I want to thank everybody who has already talked. I think this is some great information and valuable sharing. We're hearing a lot of different things from our businesses, and I know that the small and minority business community in general, across the country for sure, but definitely in Louisiana has been hit, very hard by this, particularly because of our industries. And I think that businesses are experiencing different impacts based on their industry. So, we are a hospitality and tourism economy. We are heavy into oil and gas. Both of those industries have taken, a huge hit. And so we are seeing a lot of businesses that are struggling. And then you're seeing others who have either made a pivot or whose products and services were already aligned with the response to COVID-19, who are actually seeing an increase in business. And so, you kind of have business experiences and impacts on both sides of the spectrum. But one thing I think that has been very important for businesses is to have some type of alignment with organizations that represent large numbers of business owners. So many of the people that you have on the phone, many of the organizations that you all have already highlighted are actively advocating and working to find ways to support these businesses. So I think the second part of your question was, how as organizations do we prepare businesses to weather the storms, in the future and make their way through crisis. And I think that, one of the things that we have to reinforce coming out of this crisis and, certainly in preparation for anything in the future is to be flexible and have an ability to quickly pivot. And pivot doesn't always mean that you are changing dramatically what your business or your service is, but sometimes it's a small pivot. And so, we are now relying more on technology. We see that the meetings industry is going to change probably forever as we move forward. And so, as we come to some happy medium between in-person events and technology, how do you find yourself in that, and how can you adjust what your services are so that you can quickly take advantage of opportunities? What we do know is that every time there is a situation like this, there are opportunities that are created, and the businesses that are quick to take advantage of those opportunities are the ones that really see the benefit of that, and I think benefit from that pivot. And then the second thing we can do is to, consistently provide a lot of information and education around things like business emergency preparedness and succession planning, because you never know what's going to happen in the future. And so to always be prepared, I think, is paramount for everybody. And in a normal economy, in a normal climate, we tend to forget that and relax. But we have to remember that being prepared and staying prepared are the most important things for any business owner. And we see that now more than ever.
Thank you so much, Fela. I definitely appreciate it. And you're right on. That is what, all of the resource partners and of course your organization as well, and the membership organizations are working to make sure that businesses are prepared and are ready when these types of events happen. So I appreciate your remarks. And we're going to move right on to Miss Kalisha Garrett, who's the Executive Director for the New Orleans Regional Chamber, Black Chamber of Commerce. And so, Kalisha, I want to thank you for being on the call with us. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to share your thoughts on, what you guys are seeing from an organization standpoint, what you guys are seeing and hearing from our women and minority-owned small businesses, what challenges they're experiencing, but also how can we, again, just as asked Fela, how can we more deliberately and adequately prepare our small businesses for these types of events? So if you can take it away, Ms. Kalisha.
Hi, Klassi. Thank you so much for having me. And I also want to thank those individuals, you all, for putting this program together, and the Urban League for taking leadership as it relates to conversations that we need to have. As it was stated earlier, and I'm not going to reiterate most of those thoughts, but our business community, we cover our minority businesses throughout a 10-parish region, but I'm also affiliated with the Louisiana Chamber of Commerce Foundation that covers the state. And the communications around the state are the same. We may be in different subsets from a rural or a more urban or metropolitan area, but those small and minority businesses that are operating within those areas are feeling the same type of concern. They're feeling a little bit of anxiety and a fear of unknown. And that's something that is expected to come through a disaster, but when it's in a global pandemic that is impacting the entire U.S., there is an additional level of anxiety that has been placed on those business owners and operators, and we are feeling it significantly through Louisiana. As you guys know, the impact from the health component of it and death in our communities have also placed an additional strain that our business owners are also having to deal with, outside of maybe being a sole proprietor or a 1099 contractor, or even a micro business, not so much just a small business, but being a micro business that has less than 10 or so employees, having the added anxiety and concern around operating your business, what is to come, how to participate in these types of the programs that have rapidly been provided through the SBA and other organizations through EIDL loans as well as the PPP loans, but understanding how to provide the information that is being required, the documentation that is necessary in order to participate in these types of programs, while also thinking about how are they going to sustain or continue in operation. I think those are many of the fears that have been expressed by our business community. They are top of mind and the things that are being communicated to us on a daily basis. What this pandemic has done, it has allowed us to remove the blinders and allowed us to have some conversations that we have internally been having throughout our organizations with the National Urban League and other minority focused or diverse business focused member organizations. Now these conversations are coming to light, and I think it is a time in which we will have to stand together. We will have to stop meeting in silos and start communicating effectively with each other and coordinating an effort so that we can provide information that will impact our business community as a whole. We know historically we have had issues with access to capital, understanding that banking is relationships, and having access to contracts or continuation of work during or amid a crisis is also typically based on relationships. One of the things that happened immediately when we went into this crisis situation is the change in the way that corporations or cities or state governments were procuring goods or services or supplies. Emergency procurement operations were put in place, meaning that many of those initiatives mentioned earlier by the representative as it relates to Hudson Initiative and as well as any minority or DBE percentages were not in effect per se from a compliance standpoint. It was encouraged, but at the time during an emergency procurement, we know that that is not always top of mind when it comes to what is needed at that time to be put in place. With that, we know that we've all been fighting for inclusion, diversity, equity, and equality, and not wanting to have us go backwards. We need to really come together at this point and understand what is being done. There are different organizations, there are different groups, there are different committees, two of which I participate in as it relates to the Louisiana Economic Recovery Task Force that the legislators have put into place, as well as the Resilient Louisiana campaign that the governor mentioned. Both of those are put into place right now and currently seeking information as it relates to policy changes and things that would be able to identify different ways that we can ensure that our businesses can, one, sustain this immediate crisis, and then two, what does it look like for us getting back to business? From our minority business community, outside of the fact that they may not have had the best or most perfect foundational start to their business, understanding how to provide technical assistance or some sort of support and training to them so that they can be prepared and they can get back into business and know that through this crisis going into that next period, what is needed to be put in place to ensure that their foundation is stable and that they will not have the business interruption and can maintain their continuity through crisis and be able to sustain their business. One of the other questions that you asked about was in succession and understanding that our businesses most often are not operating in a sense of having themselves being prepared to be acquired. most of our businesses are operating in a sense of just wanting to be able to provide a good or service, or wanting to be able to act in a capacity of being their own boss, but not so much planning for an organization, a larger organization, to come to acquire them, or having themselves prepared to have an offering that is suitable, that someone is looking to attain. And I'm not saying that we should prepare to sell off our businesses, but I think that if we're operating in a sense in which we have that documentation in place, it will provide us with any documentation that is needed in the event that a crisis occurs. So that way we can kind of work ourselves through operating our business as such, and having those key documents in place that's needed to kind of get us through these types of situations. Because what we know now is that what was once old is now new. Looking at those areas that Representative Johnson stated earlier, looking at agriculture and farming and understanding manufacturing, and the fact that we are probably going to start leaning more towards biomedical and digital and more innovative industries, so that we can expand our businesses and have different revenue streams. Everyone's local delegation is hard at work right now, trying to figure out what laws can be reexamined and what new suggestions can be introduced. This is the time that I think we should provide that input. The policy recommendations are ways that we can introduce more equity and equality, so that we can have conversations around the use of incentives to have our contracts awarded to more local businesses, and have an ability to have our dollars circulate within our community for longer periods of time. The other things that we know we're going to have to look for is gap funding or some subsidies, because we have businesses that are going to be going back into operation that may not have a full operating capacity, being that they may only be able to serve 25% of their clientele. They may not be able to bring back all of the full-time workers that they had prior to. So I think that our adaptation to this global shutdown is going to force us to re-examine how we do business, how we have to do business. It's going to train a lot of us to understand more how to operate through Zoom meetings, and having more social distancing in place for longer periods of time. I think that we need to understand and define what our business success is going to look like. You know, they may need to have additional revenue streams, or ways that they can ensure that they're not dependent on one type of clientele just to sustain their business. I do feel that, you know, this is a time for us to press that reset button and to learn from this crisis, so that we know that we can prepare for the unknown journey that's yet to come.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Kalisha. That is absolutely it. I love that term, reset. This is a perfect opportunity for our businesses to reset. So I definitely appreciate those remarks. And, you know, I think it's also an opportunity for us to more across the state, more effectively collaborate with one another, right? All of the resource partners, all of the membership-based organizations. Let's, you know, continue to or start working better together, so that we can support the businesses that need our help, because they're going to need our help, and they need it now, and they're going to need it, like you said, more so afterwards, to determine how they reset. So thank you so much for your remarks. I have 2 questions. I'm just going to go to 2 questions, and I think that they are specifically focused on the loan programs. And so Mike, if you're there, go ahead and unmute yourself. I know the first question was, when is the EIDL application going to be opened back up? And I think I can answer that pretty quickly. And I think that it's still unknown at this point. They are still processing what they had in the queue, and also tying up some background technical updates to the system to make sure that it's still as efficient as possible for small business owners to apply. And so as soon as we get the word, the SBA puts out updates. You can go to their sba.gov to sign up for updates, but also you can stay in touch with the Urban League of Louisiana, because as those updates come out, we will send them out as well. And then also, Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
Nope, that's it. We don't know. I expect it will be soon, but
yeah,
I'll know when you know.
That's right. That's right. And then another question: if we are not able to monitor who has received loans, how can we determine equitable distribution? So that goes to speaking about the data that is not available today. Mike, do you want to provide some insight on that? If we're not able to monitor who has received loans, how can we determine equitable distribution?
That information is being held in Washington. They do have the information. They just have not released it down to the district office. So when I said we don't know, what I meant for we is me and Joanne and our staff here don't know. But the SBA does have that information, and I expect that they're looking at it right now and making decisions based on the information that they have. But, you know, that's opaque to me. I can't see it.
Yeah, information is there. We just don't know what that looks like at this point. And so, again, as the SBA Louisiana District Office gets information, they send it out across the board to their partners, their local resource partners. As we get the information, we will be sure to send it out to our database. So please be sure to continue to stay connected to the Urban League of Louisiana and the other partners that are on the line and that are a part of our ecosystem. A question, what will happen to the funds that are being returned by the larger companies that have received the millions of dollars from the PPP? What's happening to those funds?
Those funds that have been returned in the first tranche of funding is being used to pay the advances on the idle loans that were in the queue when funding was suspended. So that money is being recycled back into the program.
Gotcha. I think that's all for our questions. Thank you so much, Mike, for clarification on those points. I think that there's a lot of interest in making sure that there's information around the PPP and the idle, and also all the resources that have come to play. I want to thank our panelists once again for all of their insight, all of their feedback. And as I mentioned, this is just the beginning of the conversation. I am hoping that you all are open to further engaging with us as the Urban League of Louisiana, also the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, as we look to continue to hone in on how we support our small businesses more effectively over time, and again, across the state. So again, thank you all for your time. And I'm going to move right along to Representative Fred Jones from District 16. Representative Jones, are you on the line? Are we going?
Hello, can you hear me?
Is this Representative Jones or?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to thank President Morris and the Urban League of Louisiana for putting on this series. It's a wealth of knowledge coming from all of the guest speakers and the panelists. You know, all of the information in regards to the SBA loans, whether it was the PPP or the economic injury disaster loan, is very helpful to the general public. Even with the Mr. Rick saying that it was a delay in funding, and even though the program was launched quickly, it did help a lot of people. I think it was a good thing that the big banks were prevented from lending. Therefore, the smaller banks now can take advantage, and we can see what is the benefit of that. And I'm sure that'll come out. We are talking about filing some legislation to monitor the economic impact of COVID-19 on minority and small businesses. So that is coming down the pipe. I think my colleague Representative Jordan talked about the Hudson Initiative and DBEs, and we also need to get that information to the general public so they can know their rights as DBEs and what are the resources available to them. Ms. Hartman spoke of the Louisiana Contractors Training Institute, Hudson Initiative, bonding initiatives, and economic gardening. Those are also more resources that we need to get to the general public. And also, as far as our small businesses, just talking about networking, period. Our small businesses in Louisiana need to know one another. We recently had a tornado here in Monroe, Louisiana, where I represent. And it was the small businesses who are helping to get us out of this crisis. Even though we're going through this pandemic, everybody came together and pushed out resources, whether it was feeding programs, whether it was cleaning debris. The small businesses are the ones who are on the scene, who are at ground zero, and who are pulling us out. So again, I just want to say thank you to the panel for doing this in regards to general health and general wealth. And thank you for having the Louisiana Legislative Black Caucus. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Representative Jones. I really appreciate those closing remarks, and so grateful to you and to every member of the Legislative Black Caucus that have participated with us this week, as well as those who are on the line. I want to make sure that everyone knows that all of your Black Caucus members across Louisiana have been participating in the calls. You've heard from some of them and you've seen some of them, but please know that all of them have been listening every night so that they can hear this conversation and also hear the questions. So again, thank you so much to the Black Caucus for your partnership around this series and all the time. This is it, everybody. We have completed now a total of 5 town halls that have looked at health disparities and the social determinants that contribute to these disparities. We have to continue to understand the interconnectedness of these issues, because this is now life or death, our life or death. So please, please, please stay tuned to the work of the Urban League of Louisiana. If you don't receive our information, please go to our website and sign up. Really important that you stay with us. We need you to do this work. We do it on your behalf and in partnership with you. So make sure that you are getting information from us so that we can continue to work together. You heard that mentioned throughout this evening. We've got to reset. We've got to partner. We've got to look at things anew. So let's start. Let's continue to do that. And of course, we are doing that across the state of Louisiana. I also want to remind you to please follow the work of the Resilient Louisiana Commission. Governor Edwards created that commission to help us to think about economic development and the economic impact of this pandemic. We are so pleased that Jay Brown Russell, who is the chair of the Urban League Board, has been appointed as a commissioner to that commission. So we have someone that we can give information to so that our voices are represented. And we are talking about this work as it relates to the health disparities. We know that this issue is impacting African Americans at a disproportionately high rate. And so the governor also created a health equity task force. I am honored to sit on that task force. Thank you to Governor Edwards for that appointment so that the Urban League of Louisiana can be represented there as well. Again, thanks to Senator Jimmy Harris, who is the chair of the Louisiana Legislative Black Caucus, Representative Barbara Carpenter, who serves as vice chair, to all of the caucus members. Special thanks to Cynthia Buggage and Raquel Shavers for their leadership and their support in the executive director's office. I want to thank the Urban League team who helped to make these town hall meetings possible. Ginger LeBlanc, Nicole Jolly, and Jonathan Barnes. Also to Cherie Duckworth, who served as moderator Wednesday night, and to, of course, Klassi Duncan, who served as our moderator tonight. Thank you again to everyone for being with us. We are just getting started. There will be more town hall meetings bringing important issues to light for discussion, for work, and for partnership. So again, on behalf of the Urban League of Directors, Urban League Board of Directors, and all of our Urban League team in New Orleans and in Baton Rouge and across the state, thank you so much for participating, and we look forward to seeing you at our next town hall meeting.